Welcome to the About Sex podcast, where we discuss...
Ponies!
No, we're not discussing ponies, Angela.
Well, I really want to.
My name is Josh, and with me, as always, is my lovely wife, Angela Skirtu. Tell us who you are, Angela.
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and an ASEX certified sex therapist. And today, our guest is Hector Rivera. Will you tell us your website, Hector?
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for being here.
My name's Hector Rivera. I am an executive coach and facilitator, and my website is happyandhealthyover40.com. And what's that all about?
Tell us all about you.
Yeah. That's the website and podcast for people over 40 where we discuss health, sex, mindset, and lifestyle, and relationships as we enter our 40s and beyond. And I started this website because I realized that many people feel a great deal of anxiety and shame about themselves as they get older. And I think that it should be the exact opposite. I think you should start really feeling really great about who it is that you are and who it is that you're becoming as we get older.
So how old are you? Are you over 40? Are you over 40?
Bless your heart. Yeah, I am. I'm 54. I'm going to be 55 in a couple of months, so
cool.
I'm well over 40.
You're well over 40.
Why do you think people struggle with feeling anxious and being shameful when it comes to aging?
You know what? That's a great question, and I think there's a men's answer and there's a woman's answer.
Okay.
And the male answer has to do with doing, right? And what do I mean by doing? I mean like being able to bring home the bacon and being virile and being able to...
We like bacon.
We like bacon and virility. Ooh.
Yeah. Or virile bacon.
Oh, virile bacon, Josh.
It's important.
So tell us more about this virility.
So men, it's more about functionality and being able to still feel like you have a purpose in life.
Yeah, and it's like having a dynamic purpose, something that's actually going to get you going in the morning and have you feeling like you have a purpose in life and that you're heading somewhere and doing something. And a lot of men, what they end up doing instead, and actually women do this, but they do it for different reasons. They reach back into the past and they want to relive their high school football days or something like that, instead of accepting themselves and improving the body that they're in. They want to actually become younger again. Women, the answer is a little bit different because a woman's currency, men is more about doing, and women, it's more about feeling and being. And as I work
women like to feel a lot.
Women feel so much. It's exhausting.
Yeah. They're always having feelings. Yeah.
I hate to feel.
You have too many feelings, Angela.
I do.
Sorry, go ahead.
So more about the women, please.
More about women.
So what ends up happening is that a woman's currency, a man's currency is about like his assets, what he's done, his achievements. Is he a leader of men? Like those are things that, and sexual power, the ability to penetrate. That's like a male's.
Yeah. I hear men like to penetrate often.
Yeah, penetration is kind of important.
Penetration. As often as we can, I guess.
Sure. But women, they like to feel more. So what is that? What does that mean?
That means they want to be penetrated, right?
Yeah. Inappropriate, Josh.
Well, it's a podcast about sex. It's kind of what
we talk about sex. So tell us about the female currency.
The female currency has to do with how she looks, and especially if you're dealing with a particularly physically attractive woman, her whole life she's been hearing how pretty she is and how beautiful she is, and even if she's tired of hearing it and she's exhausted and it's just like too much for her, when she stops hearing it, right, or where she doesn't hear it as often, women become concerned. And then I notice that women start to do things like have plastic surgery and Botox and all kinds of things
Right.
to change their physical look, and are no longer really interested in growing into the body that they're living in.
No,
They
women
want-
always seem to like have this image of themselves from their 20s when they were at their peak, sexually, physically attractive, and I think men do it too.
Yeah, I think
And-
everybody wants to be sexy.
And no matter how old you get, you always kind of see yourself in your head as that's who I am.
Well, but the problem is then we don't have visuals of what it could look like to be sexy as you age. You know, like culture and society are kind of placing that on us as well by only showing sexuality in those young teens and 20s. And it's like, well, no, you can age and be beautiful and handsome.
Sure.
I think that's what you're here to tell us about, Hector, right?
Yeah.
I would say you're right.
Yeah.
That's a good guess. That is the entirety of my message. We tend to instead of, I'll tell you a quick story. I had a friend. This guy was just so he was so committed to just being young. Instead of being healthy and being like embodied in his own body and taking up some space as a mature man, he wanted to be a young guy again. And I'd go places with him, and he'd be dressed up like a young rapper, like a teenage rapper. This guy, and mind you, this guy was like 50-something years old. He was at the time, he was about 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
And he'd wear like these baseball caps to the side, and and FUBU t-shirts and baggy shorts. And,
Right.
and it was a little embarrassing.
So right, they're kind of dressing like what people at the time is dressing in their 20s. Like you
Yeah.
try to dress like the kids.
And we're trying to say that it's possible to look handsome in your own adult way, like grow
Yeah.
up and stuff. No way.
But honestly, for me, the hat to the side and dressing like a rapper, I think even in your 30s, that's kind of pushing it.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Like really.
Well, the thing is that he didn't have a young face either, so it looked like something out of a Disney movie where the mad scientist like shoots you with an aging ray, and you're a teenager, and now suddenly you're an old man.
Yeah.
And that was, it was kind of a thing, and I always remember that as him being somebody who was just not comfortable in his own skin. And I
Yeah.
can't think of anything less sexy than being uncomfortable in your own skin and trying to impress others with like some external idea of what it is to be sexy or to be virile.
So how do you find ways to be comfortable in your own skin and feel sexy?
I
For
think
your age?
everybody could use that lesson.
Like how do you find that? Like
Yeah, it's taken a lot of work. I mean, if you really want to get into it, I had an injury about a little over 10 years ago, about 12 years ago now, and my injury caused me to lose a lot of things in my life.
can I ask what the
Okay.
injury was?
Yeah, I had. Oh, and incidentally, my injury was I broke my foot at work.
Sure.
And it was a bad injury. Foot injuries, like when you break a bone in your foot, believe me, it's not fun. They never heal quite right. There's always something a little bit wrong with them.
Right.
And that was my experience. And over the course of 3 years, I pretty much lost like all of the material stuff in my life, and my identity changed a great deal.
Yeah.
And I was no longer like this, alpha male, like go get 'em, building wealth and all this other stuff. And it all went and dissipated over time. And there was not much that doctors and health professionals could do for me. So I set about trying to accept myself a great deal. And incidentally, I've been listening to your podcast, and my heart really goes out to Richard, the gentleman who had neuropathy.
Yeah.
And
he had diabetic neuropathy, and he lost a lot of feeling and sensation in his body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, he wasn't able to get erections.
Which is hard because there are some men that go through that. So many men go through little ED problems here and there where their penis just doesn't work the way that it did when they were 20 in their 20s. But there is also a group of men that have prostate cancer or that have to do some sort of surgery down there, and that surgery can really take away any feeling and any ability to get an erection. So it is a difficult thing for many men to face and cope with.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you see that a little bit too, or like learning to own even when you have a problem. How do you accept yourself?
Yeah, self-acceptance is really key to all of this stuff, and the ability to see self-acceptance. There's a bit of confusion around self-acceptance. Self-acceptance does not mean that this is how it's going to be forever. It just means that you're accepting where you are at right now in this moment.
So it's not giving up. It's like, that's it, I'm done. I'm accepting it. No, it's finding a way to function
and cope with what you've got.
Deal with what you have, but find a way to be happy with it, right?
Yeah, and also how to change it. Because here's what happened for me. And this was a very dramatic thing in my life, because I was going about, I got into Vipassana meditation. I got into a practice here on the West Coast. It's spreading. It's called circling, and that is
circling?
A way of circling is a way of self-discovery through the eyes of others, and others will ask you questions and they'll tell you how they feel about what it is that they say in a very direct, honest way. And so actually during one of those meetings where we were doing this circling practice, I actually met a gentleman called Mark Sisson. And during that weekend, it was like a workshop weekend. During that weekend, I could hardly walk. I mean, I was literally, my foot looked like I had a grapefruit on the top of my left foot.
That had to hurt.
It was very painful. My knees were swollen. And this guy just came up to me like this old. He was about 10 years older than me, and he was really fit. And at the time, I was very depressed. I was very overweight. And my depression just kept pushing me down. And Mark came up to me. He says, "Wow, man, why are you walking like that?" It's like you look like you're in a lot of pain. And he and I had a discussion, and he said, "Show me the inflammation." He goes, "Or show me your knee, and show me your foot." And I showed him. He goes, "That's all information." And I said, "No, man, the doctor said I need this and an operation." And he goes, "Yeah, he wants to do all that stuff to you because you have a lot of inflammation in your body." And what ended up happening, Mark and his wife, Mark and Carrie Sisson, I owe them a great debt. And they really, really helped me to learn and understand that diet is king when it comes to all of these things. When it comes to your mental health, when it comes to your physical health, when it comes to your spiritual vitality, that at the base of all of that stuff is your diet. Like, what are you putting in, and not just what are you putting into your stomach? What are you putting into your ears? What are you putting into your eyes? Like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Is this where you try to convince us to be a vegan? Sorry.
The exact opposite. It's what's right for you.
Okay.
There is no right or wrong across the board. There's only what's right for you. And through working with them, I was able to discover like what was right for me and what makes me feel happy, what makes me feel vital. And as a result of that, I just felt like I really came out of my shell. And I feel so great that I decided that I would help other people with it as well.
Yeah. So what was your diet like before the switch?
I got to tell you, whatever felt good, whatever made me feel a little less bad, was on the menu.
So lots of sugar and
Lots of sugar and fat.
Bacon.
Bacon.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
I'm still a fan of bacon. You know, you can do the bacon thing. You know, you just can't do it all the time. And,
right.
And one of the biggest things was getting off of the standard American diet. You know, no longer eating big old cinnamon roll in the morning with a cup of coffee. As painful as that was, as much as I love cinnamon rolls, there was a better way. There was a better way to do things and a better way to function. And then I realized that I actually liked sex more than I like cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. That's a good thing to learn.
I hear if you take care of your body, you get to have sex well into your 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I interview a lot of people on the podcast. I just had a 76-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
That's awesome.
Who's very vital. I mean, he goes surfing with his son. Him and his wife travel the world. And it's all through diet and exercise. It's like he doesn't do it because he likes the diet and exercise. He just likes the results.
Yeah, like I diet and exercise too, and it's not fun.
No,
to
it takes
do,
a lot of work.
But it's worth it because you feel better and you have a better life.
I will say I like the yoga. We've been doing yoga lately, and it's so nice. Like, it helps my body feel better. So, like, while it's work, I think it's a worthwhile work. Oh, yeah.
It's totally worthwhile, and yoga is one of the most is like a staple for me in terms of my physical health and my mental health as well. Oh, yeah. You can yoga. Oh, number one tip if you're just approaching 40 or getting into wherever you are. I mean, you could be in your 60s, and you want to get into exercise. Forget the heavy weights. Yeah. Start taking care of your joints. Start taking care of your knees, your elbows, your ankles, your back, all those things. Start taking care of the connective tissue and the joints. And I was going to say also, I'm not telling Richard what to do or anything like that. I mean, he's on his own journey. But one of the things that I had neuropathy. And I still have neuropathy. Yeah. And one of the things that is very important is to keep sugar out of your diet. And I mean like sugar, like the sugar you put in your coffee, ice cream, those types of sugars. If you're having fruit, there is, we can get into the whole glycemic index and all that other stuff, but I don't think that's necessary.
Right, but now, like natural sugars, your body takes in differently than refined sugars, right? And,
precisely.
And with diabetes, the neuropathy and the damage to your cells comes because you have that sugar built up in your blood and you can't take it out, right? Isn't that what happens?
Yeah, you can't take it out, and so what does your body do with it? Your body turns it into fat, right? And
it damages the cells on the way, Yeah,
it does. It does. Like fat is not like we were joking about bacon earlier. Bacon is not in itself a bad thing. No. Bacon is actually a really good thing. It's really tasty and it's nutritious to a point.
Right. Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation, and as long as you don't add a ton of sugar into your diet, as long as you're not eating donuts and ice cream and things of this nature, or a lot of people think that if, I'm just having some bread, whole grains, that's still glucose, that's still sugar that you're putting into your body. So as long as you stay away from heavy carbohydrate diet, then you're probably going to end up better off. But again, you have to experiment for yourself to take a look and see what's actually going on for you.
So I have a question. How do, as you get older, do you find you have to modify the ways that you have sex and to have a sexy health life as you're over 40? Hold on 1 second, actually.
So how do I modify sex as I got older? Well, you know what? It's, for me personally, it's not so much about having to modify what it is that I'm doing because everything is working, thank goodness, pretty well up until right now. but it's more about honoring and empowering myself, and asking more for what it is that I want. And a lot of times, in particular, things like involving kink and what have you, in terms of what it is that we want and desire, that we've always we've not honored because we were afraid, or I was afraid just to own it. I was afraid of taking ownership of what it is that I like and what I like to do, and what it is that I want.
So when did you have that switch?
You know what? That happened right around, I would say right around my 50th birthday. Because at that point, I realized about 4.5 years ago, I realized, you know what? What am I waiting for?
You only have so many years to live this world. You might as well enjoy them.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, I mean, so, and that, it really had more to do with my ability to just ask for what it is that I want. And I just another person I had Celeste Hirschman from Somatica up in the Bay Area, who is a sex therapist and as well, just like you. And she was on the show, and she was talking about sexual empowerment and asking for what it is that you want. And she was actually instrumental. She was another instrumental person in teaching me how to actually go after the things that I want and desire and be completely unapologetic about it. It's a hard thing to do. It is, but it's definitely worth doing.
I think it's important for people to remove shame from sex. You know, what you're talking about there, I think that's the biggest thing that keeps people back from their wanting their sex life, is they're worried, you know, like, what are people going to think of me?
Right.
And
when you ask for that, what are they going to say?
Yeah, what are they going to say? Are they going to like me? Are they going to not like me?
What is my mom going to think?
I hope your mom's not around for your sex life. But we do carry those. No, I know, but we carry those that baggage. Anything she might have told you growing up that you worry about.
Sure.
So so anyhow, you kind of started to let go of that.
You let go of that shame and just started asking for what you want. Get into it.
Yeah, and incidentally, Mom, shut off this podcast now. Stop saying.
Why are you listening to my podcast, Mom?
I know. Well, she wants to support me, Mom does.
Yeah.
But don't support me like this, Mom. It's just creepy.
Now, my mom actually doesn't watch the podcast. She's I've gotten her to watch a few episodes that weren't about sex. It was the bread lady episode, but the other one, she's like, I just can't hear my son talk about sex all day. It's not going to happen.
We're okay with it.
Well, and something especially when you're dealing with things around kink, there tends to be. I had another sex therapist on the show who his story was so sad, and how he had built his entire life around being this other person, and that involved his sexuality. And the reason why I don't speak specifically about sexuality is because that's all part and parcel of who it is we are. It's so hard to separate that, and we try to compartmentalize that part of our life.
Right.
And this gentleman had tried to compartmentalize that part of his life and keep it separate. And his wife had found out about his kink, and it almost ruined him, and it took him many years to rebuild. So wherever you're at, I mean, please accept yourself and accept where you're at, and build a community around yourself of people that are accepting of this version of yourself. Because it's in the long and the short of it is, as long as you're taking responsibility for who you are and taking responsibility for your own actions and your own, the words that are coming out of your mouth, you're not lying to anybody. It's completely harmless, and it should be incidental.
Well, and to tell you that, like, to go further on that, like, I think people are always afraid of what other people think, but it sounds like your message is be your authentic self, and you'll draw people into you that are okay with who you are. And maybe it's better to find those people rather than trying to conform to people that just don't accept you for who you naturally are.
Right. You want to seek out people who have similar beliefs and morals.
And it doesn't mean they can't have different values or beliefs, but they have to be deeply accepting.
They cannot have different values, Angela. Everybody has to conform exactly to what I think.
No, they just have to be accepting of you, crazy.
I know. I'm messing with you.
Well, it's and a lot of times there are people that, I have strong beliefs, but I hang on to them very loosely.
Yeah.
Okay. And when someone, if perhaps someone can educate me further on something, if I'm somehow enlightened by something you have to say or something that you're doing, I'm all for it,
Sure.
But the biggest part of that equation is actually listening and accepting yourself. When you accept, and here's the point, when you accept yourself, okay, as you are, and you're really cool about it, then actually what people have to say and how people behave or anything like that is less challenging.
Yeah.
Or at least I found that for myself and some of my clients as well. It's like if somebody were to tell you that you were a three-headed, green-headed monster, right?
They tell me that all the time. Yep.
Yeah. You would tend not to believe that. And you would
Right.
say, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not,
Right.
But if there's like
if you're
something
sure of
in
yourself,
there for you where you're feeling somehow, like you're being judged harshly or unfairly, or that's not true, I need to defend myself, and you take that position, then, well, chances are that things are probably going to hurt a lot more, so self-acceptance is key.
Yeah. So, you talk a little bit about taboo of sex after 40. Like, why do you think there's a taboo of sex as an older person?
Yeah, that's a really tough one in terms of how society sees us as we get older. And a big part of that, and I talk a lot about advertising and media in general and how we're seen. Most advertising, I think it's somewhere in the realm of 80 to 85% of advertising is directed at the ages of 18 to 34, 35-year-olds. Okay. And everything in that demographic is described as vibrant, young, fulfilling. Your life is ahead of you. Everything is great. As long as you buy our product, as long as you buy a Chevy Camaro or whatever the hell it is that they're selling,
Sure.
right, you can be vibrant too. After that, what are they, when you're 35, 40, 50 years old, 60, 70 years old, what are they're trying to sell you Metamucil,
Right.
They're trying to sell you life. Right? They're selling you Viagra, and then they show the guy, the Viagra guy, and he's like, hey, hip guy playing, with a little bit of white hair, playing the saxophone in his garage band.
Oh yeah, Josh does that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I'm like, Josh,
Come on,
put your
Josh.
saxophone down already.
How dare you? You were not supposed to ever tell anybody about my secret saxophone life.
He's secretly a jazz player.
I am a sax addict.
Josh, you and me, let's start a band.
I'm a secret sax addict. I broke Angela.
He broke me. Every now and then he breaks me with the joke. That was a good one,
So,
Josh.
you think a lot of the taboo of older people having sex has to do more with how just society sees the older generations?
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't matter which generation. I mean, our parents were treated the same way. I mean, and think about it, and think about how we treat people as they get older. Think about grandpa, okay, or dad. Dad is the least important person in the family.
I don't think Dad wants to hear that.
Poor Dad.
Poor Dad. Hey, I'm a dad. How dare you?
Do you feel that way, Josh?
Yeah, but that's because I am the only guy, and there's 2 women in the house.
That's true.
So.
All right, continue.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like a lot of people's taboo or like not acceptance of somebody older having sex has a lot to do with the fact that they're your parents' age. Like, the reality is, like, I don't see my parents as sexual creatures, because I think that's what we're all kind of raised on, is like the parents keep their sex life from their kids, and they don't share it at all. They don't see that at all. And I think that's kind of what I've always seen of that older generation, is they're not sexual. But the reality is they are. They just hide it from us. So I think that's part of why I don't see that older generation as something sexual. But I also don't see the younger ones as sexual. And I think that's kind of normal.
I don't know.
Like, for me not to find younger people super attractive. I mean, they're teenagers. No, they're babies.
Well, maybe it's in how you're defining it, though,
even
Josh.
20-year-olds.
So, like, I think you're thinking about, like, who you find attractive versus who's sexual. I see, like, a person being sexual is just if you're interested in sex. And I can see anyone from age 0 to 100 being interested in sex.
Sure, I understand
but, like,
that they
I'm
are.
only attracted to people about 10 years to 10 years up and down.
But in my brain, if I
Unless
don't...
it's a really hot old guy.
But I think for me, like, if somebody's, like, 30, 40 years different in age from me, I just don't see them as sexual beings. And it's not necessarily that they aren't. I know they are. I 100% know they are. It's just, they're not a sexual being to me, because I'm younger, and I've always seen my parents as not being sexual.
What are your thoughts on this, Hector?
Well, that's interesting what Josh is saying, because it has to do with self-interest, and I get it. And I'm not interested in a 15-year-old. I'm just I'm not wired that way. They're nowhere. I can't relate to them.
They're babies.
And by the
Kids
same
these
token,
days.
I cannot relate to as much to a 75-year-old in a sexual way. But one thing I will say is that regarding sexuality, as we get older, some people are actually quite comfortable becoming more asexual, and what they require more. And I've worked with some people, and what they require more is just more touch, and more sensual touch,
more affection,
as opposed to sexual touch. And that can cause a lot of shame as well.
Why?
Especially for men.
Why would that cause shame? I don't understand. Well,
because men are considered, like, again, the whole penetrative aspect to sex, especially when we're younger. Like, you're expected to
stick it
bring
in.
home the bacon, as we were saying earlier.
Some very hard bacon.
Very, very, very firm
Very
bacon.
firm bacon.
The firmest of bacon. I'll give you some breakfast sausage.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy Dean's got a package for you.
That's right. Yeah, you bring it home to Longaniza,
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not gonna. Not everybody ages. We don't all age the same way. Some men are still very much into penetrative sex. Some men are not. Some men are having erectile dysfunction and are still into penetrative sex. It's a very complex issue, but really, when you're dealing with something as important as your own empowerment, you're also dealing with something called responsibility. Okay. And you have to take personal responsibility for what's happening in your life. If you want to get to someplace, if you're unsatisfied and unhappy with something that's happening, you have to take personal responsibility for it. And there's no time like the present.
So what you're saying is it's okay for a man to want to cuddle and be affectionate and hold you, and you need to own that.
Yeah.
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 I love to cuddle. I'm a big fan.
Me too, Josh.
Well, I know you do. You're always wanting to cuddle.
I'm always like, cuddle me, Josh, cuddle.
I'll allow it.
That's awesome because I mean we all, and it's different for everyone. I'm a big cuddler as well. You know, I just want to. Sometimes I just want to hold you. You know,
Yeah.
and hold you in my arms and not have it go any place other than that, unless it's something that we feel called upon to escalate.
Right.
But there is a lot of shame around things like this. As ironic as it seems, there is shame around things like being less sexual as we get older.
So
and that is also part of our sexuality.
That's so weird to me. Like, to me, that's love. Like, that's love. You're giving love to somebody in a non-sexual way. And I don't think anybody should have shame about that at all.
Well, and let's be fair. You know, like, I think as a culture, we need to allow men to experience more. Like, I feel like we kind of pigeonhole men in society. So it's like, you're allowed to be sexual, you're allowed to be angry, and you're allowed to be calm. And that's about it.
You can drink beer and football and like cars.
Yeah,
and
like,
that's it.
and men have a wide variety of emotions and needs, just like women. But because they've been socialized to not, like they're called pussies, for example, or they're called. Actually, you're shamed from childhood for being anything other than those three things.
Right.
So I completely understand where the shame's coming from.
Generally, the ones who are saying it are the most insecure about it.
They
all.
are.
Yeah. So I've learned to just let it roll off my shoulder. Like, I'm happy with my masculinity. I'm okay with it.
It's a very hot masculinity, Josh.
Oh, it's super hot. I'm very firm.
Wow, Josh has got it going on.
I know, he's doing a lot of dick jokes today. It's funny.
That's how I roll.
Well, you know something, and I noticed something because when I first got injured, I got into men's work and men's groups, and I was very unsatisfied with what was available to me in terms of men's work. There was either like the typical men's group, which was all heart, you know, like feeling into emotion and sharing emotions with one another, which is great for some people.
Sure.
And then there's like the all dick, you know, like penetrative, you know.
Yeah, the they're pirates, right? We're talking about pirates. There's a pirate group.
Well, pirates would fit very well into this other group, which is like this alpha male type of men's group.
They're very raping and pillaging kind of people, you know.
Yeah,
like
you know,
pirates.
essentially, like bringing us back to a different time, a different place. Well, neither one of those were satisfying for me because the first group, the feelers, was something that I felt I didn't particularly need. I felt like I was making friends with that part of myself.
Yeah.
And the other aspect had absolutely no value for me because I was raised around guys like that, you know, and I know what that's all about. And these guys, they were kind of playing at being like big tough guys and everything like that. I was raised by big tough guys, and these guys had nothing on my uncles and my dad. So it was just boring for me. So I started my own men's group.
Interesting.
And which was a balance of both, where you know there was the ability to be penetrative, to be strong, to be powerful, but at the same time to feel into that and what's really going on for you when you do these things. So and I did that for 3 years.
So you can have your masculinity, but you can still have emotions. It's okay to feel emotions, but you don't have to just be 100% masculine or 100% emotional.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah. And it's a caricature of what you know, a man should be. It's like that old school version of what a man was, right? The old school version of a caricature of what a man was to this new age caricature of what a man is, and it's like this touchy-feely guy, you know, who respects women above all else, but there's no balls behind it.
You know, that actually reminds me of Fight Club. Actually, they had a men's group in there.
That was fighting? Or?
No. So they have the Fight Club, but he also would go to like self-help groups.
Yeah.
And one of the groups he went to was a masculine men's group who had testosterone problems, I think it was. And it was very much like sounded what he was talking about, a lot of emotional and hugging.
Yeah.
And I think that movie actually did a good job of showing the extremes.
Yeah,
where you have the men who are beating each other in the face with fists, and then they're also in another setting hugging each other,
crying in each
crying.
other's arms.
Yeah.
Well,
but the reality is most people don't want to be either of those extremes.
Well, and I think in society we feel this duality like that. Like you can either be one or the other. Women have a similar thing with our sexuality. We can either be Madonna or the whore. You're either this Vestal virgin or you're a slut.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's happening on both
But if
sides.
you have to choose one, I'm going for the slut.
What we need is a variety of,
Sure.
of different role models that you don't have to be all of one anything.
Right. Right. And most women are not. Nobody's 100% a virgin unless they're a virgin. But
when they
own
feel
thing.
like they have to fall in that category, then even when they're married, they'll sometimes struggle to have sex.
Or they just hide their sexuality from everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, I love Madonna, and I love the fact that she's a whore. I love that. By the way,
I think she meant the other Madonna, but yeah.
Like a virgin, so
yeah.
there you have it.
Oh, so she's totally religious then too.
Oh yeah, Madonna's a big religious person. I think she's Catholic.
Well, she was Catholic, but she has that Catholic schoolgirl syndrome going on.
Oh yeah.
Isn't she into Kabbalah now?
I don't know.
I think that was a while back. I don't know if she still is.
That was a while back. Who knows what she's into?
I don't follow her that much.
On the men's group thing, while I was facilitating, I facilitated that men's group for 3 years, and that men's group, we had information architects, engineers, medical students, had a VP of entertainment services. I mean, it was a group of very successful men. While I was facilitating that group, I was also volunteering at a lockdown facility for boys. It was kids that got themselves first and second time offenders got themselves into a bit of trouble. And I was volunteering there, and I was facilitating a group there, a men's circle there as well. These kids had nothing. And you want to know something? The problems were exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know, and let that sink in for a second. These guys, it was all the same things. Who am I? Right? Where do I stand? Am I going to be successful? Am I being loved the right way, quote unquote? Right? All of these things are things that pop up for men. Working with women, the issues are somewhat different on the surface, but ultimately, what it comes down to is we want to matter, and we want to be loved.
Right. That's everybody. 100%.
Yeah.
It's a universal.
If you break it right down, you know, like that's really what it's about. And I learned all these things just in my own little Fight Club journey.
Yeah.
You know.
I just want to be loved. Is that so wrong?
No, it's not. I'll love you.
No, it's totally true, though. And, like, going back to something we were talking about before with that authentic self, you have to fully love yourself in order to fully love others. I think when people have insecurities they're still struggling with, and that doesn't mean people don't have insecurity. I'm not saying everybody has to be a perfect human. But the more insecurities that you're struggling with and the more that you're not accepting of yourself, the harder it is to actually accept somebody who's different from you. You know?
Yeah.
Precisely.
I mean, all those insecurities come from is people who don't feel loved and they don't feel at a good place in their life and they're struggling with it. And a lot of times with men, you actually see it come out in anger.
Yeah.
You get a very angry man. Generally, they feel
they're actually
out of
really
place.
anxious.
They're really scared
or rejected. Those are the 3 tops in my office.
But men, we just show it through anger. So we'll punch a hole in the wall instead of saying
you'll start a fight.
Or instead of saying I need a hug, we'll just set the house on fire.
maybe not quite that big, but some people. He set the house on fire when he really just needed a hug.
Yep. Hug Awareness
Well,
Week. Don't forget to give a hug.
All right.
yeah, and sometimes you know what, when you're in a position like that, when you're in that, I mean, that is a very vulnerable spot to be in, where you're caught between your needs, like what it is you want, like I need a hug, and what everybody else is thinking. And that's where things like community can really come in very handy, because you can learn from other people's experiences.
Yeah.
You know, you can learn a great deal from listening to somebody else and how they handle that situation, and their ability to ask for what it is that they want, despite the fact that somebody else may not be accepting of that. And when I'm no longer a facilitator of that men's circle, but I always have other men in my life, you know, like I always have my pals, my buddies. I got my car buddies. I have my martial arts buddies, and I have like even, just an expanded community, the yoga community that I'm involved with as well. I mean, that involves men and women, and also the martial arts is men and women as well. So it's like having these things and not isolating yourself as you get older is also important, because who knows? I mean, you may meet the woman of your dreams, you know, at some place when you're involved in something that you really enjoy. I have had several clients that are mid-40s, both men, mid-40s, in the midst of a divorce, and how terrifying that can be, and how lonesome you can feel. Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about that, Angela? I'm sure you had, you know, people in that situation as well.
Well, it's just so common. Everybody ends up at that. Like, I know not everybody, but like it's such a high percentage. Actually, 60 to 80% of people cheat on each other at some point, which is the newer statistic. Since, you know, I have my book about infidelity, but like the statistic has gone up, and so of course a lot of people are going through divorce and trying to figure out what they want. A lot of times they're divorcing because they were in sexless marriages and they were very unhappy.
So when they're getting divorced, though, like what he's asking is like at that point where they're kind of off on their own. I think in general men love to isolate themselves. I don't think they like it.
Well, it's not a good choice,
but I think that
it's a common thing to do.
He's asking, is that something that happens commonly with divorces? The men after it will isolate themselves.
Well, I mean, sometimes, but I guess I've been seeing people do more dating around on, you know, and it may just be who I'm meeting. Although I will say one thing that's different. You know, like he is right that men and women need to find communities. Like sometimes I think they're just trying to go on Tinder and like meet somebody that way. But like it's a lot better to get involved in a big community so you regularly have people, because what it does is it creates more depression when you'll break up with somebody or if a date doesn't work out. You
should also have people that your community with that you're not banging.
Yeah, like everybody needs community, and
you
don't
friends.
have to like. And the hard thing is not everybody's religious. So for religious people, sometimes they'll find it.
You have
in
a built-in
church,
community with your
but
church.
But for non-religious people, then it's find a hobby, find something like martial arts or a sport or something where you're around people, so that you can still feel that sense of community, because everybody needs to feel it. But I do notice that men tend to isolate in general.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of our MOs. We go into, I think that's a primal thing. I think we go into the man cave and try to lick our wounds and figure it out. You know, we're going to figure it out, and then we're going to come out stronger. And that's the idea. But what ends up happening is that you go deeper and deeper into your shell, and you start isolating more. In terms of sexuality, if somebody is looking to get into like expanding and expressing themselves more sexually, especially as you get older, because again, what the hell are you waiting for? You know, may as well take it on now. There are like a number of groups through Meetup and whatnot popping up all over the country, probably all over the world, like sex positive groups. There's like, and I just joined one recently, just to give a plug to this group, Sex Positive LA, which I thought was an awesome group. And there were people, when I did the orientation, there were people there for any number of reasons. I was just there because it just sounded like a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, we have a group like that here in St. Louis called Sex Positive St. Louis. I'm really proud of those movements because they're really trying to give people a space to be themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and you have the ability, and you can meet like-minded people and just have a good time and learn about stuff and you know, and maybe meet somebody that is like kind of aligned along the same mental strata, you know, as yourself in terms of what it is you like and what turns you on and what have you, and help you to explore some of that stuff, you know. There's also, you know, in the kink community, there's like the internet's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
You know, you can find pretty much anything that's out there. I mean, you can find somebody else is into what it is that you're into. So you're not alone.
Yeah. The internet definitely does give you a lot more opportunities to meet people who are a lot more like you. Like you can find specifically people who are they want exactly like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but only done blindfolded.
With a foot fetish.
With a foot fetish. But you can find that on the internet. That group exists. And before, you couldn't. It was a lot harder for friends groups to find each other.
We can't recreate
I'm
a
onto
new
something.
kink.
There's definitely kicking involved.
Well, so Hector, are there any final things you want to share? We're going to kind of wrap it up here, but are there final things you would want our listeners to know about aging and sex and being healthy?
Being happy and healthy over 40. How do you do it?
Well, last thing, again, happyandhealthyover40.com, sorry, happyandhealthyover40.com/podcasts. If you want to check out some of the podcasts that I have going on there, got a ton of information on sexual empowerment. There's better communication with your partner, dating after 40, getting a woman's attention after 40, cannabis and sexual pleasure. There's a ton of stuff on there you can check out. Come on over, drop me a line, anything you'd like to hear on the show, or any questions you have in terms of being healthier and keeping your mind and your soul in a healthy body, especially as you get older. Contact me. I love what I do. I want to be doing this for the rest of my life.
Sounds great. And I'm Angela Skirtu, and you can find me at www.therapistintstlouis.com. And recently I had a book come out called Helping Couples Overcome Infidelity. You can find that on Amazon.
And this has been the About Sex Podcast. We've been talking with Hector Rivera. Be sure to add us on Facebook, review us on iTunes, and send us your questions to aboutsexpodcast@gmail.com. We may just answer them. I'm Joshua Skirtu.
And I'm Angela Skirtu.
Stay kinky, St. Louis.
Bye.
Bye.